Great.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Anna and DPC, for having us today. So I'm Linda Schmitz-Fuhrig. I'm the digital archivist from the Smithsonian Libraries and Archives. I'm here today with my colleagues from the ePADD Steering Committee, who will also be presenting, and they will introduce themselves as they speak. Next slide. So today we'll cover what ePADD is, some of its features, AI experimentation, the sustainability of it, and a wrap-up. Next slide. So we're all familiar with the wealth of information that can be present in an email account to inform historical research, but there are challenges with email collecting and preserving and making it accessible. This ranges from proprietary formats like Microsoft PST to the many versions and flavors of Mbox. And every email user is different in how they manage their accounts, ranging from detailed folder and subfolder structures to just an inbox and items. And in some cases, email accounts can be extremely large due to attachments and now the use of the cloud, allowing for even larger accounts within organizations. ePADD, or email processing, appraisal, discovery, delivery with preservation, is a tool that can help. It is a browser-based open source application that processes email collections and enables appraisal, weeding, selection, redaction, description, review, and preservation. Next slide. ePADD has been grant funded during its entire lifespan. Initial work began in 2010 based on dissertation research in Stanford University's Computer Science Department. From 2012 to 2015, ePADD received funding from the National Historical Publications and Records Commission as part of the National Archives and Records Administration in the US, enabling the development of the initial full software release. Then with phase two from 2015 to 2018, support came from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. This phase produced 6 additional versions of the software. Then Andrew W. Mellon Foundation funding allowed a new development phase from 2020 to 2021, supporting enhancements led by Stanford University Libraries in partnership with Harvard University and the University of Manchester. In 2021 to 2022, ePADD entered its 4th phase through the Email Archives, Building Capacity and Community Regrant Program administered by the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and funded by Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. This phase, known as ePADD Plus, focused on integrating some long-term preservation functionality. This included retention of full header profiles for record authenticity, support of multi-part messages, ability to import sidecar files, better metadata capture, including automatic and manual additions of premise metadata, as well as export of a preservation-ready bag. Next slide. Throughout the development, project partners have included Stanford, Harvard, University of Manchester. Various testers and users listed here have included Columbia University, the Smithsonian, University of Illinois, National Library of New Zealand, University of California, Irvine, Metro, and others. Currently, there is a steering group, a code group, and many users across the globe. The latest alpha version is 11.1.1, and it was released in April. Next slide. So as we know, email can contain PII and sensitive information that needs to be redacted and or removed, and the process can be unwieldy. But this is just one feature of where ePADD can help with this. This is an account of about 28 gig, and here we see a dashboard with some great overview information within the appraisal module. Next slide. So from selecting the lexicon search from the previous screen, I'm interested in finding out if there are Social Security numbers present. Next screen. There are a number of options, and I've selected the regular expressions. These are customizable. Next slide. So we hit upon credit card and Social Security possibilities, and there were 10 hits for the pattern of a US Social Security number. Some of them were false positives, but this one was not. For the purposes of these slides, I did manually black out the text here. And ePADD lets me select a no transfer label that I can use to restrict the entire message. It then will not appear in the next module within ePADD. But I can also redact this, especially if it is a message that should still be available to researchers or others. And now Sally will share more information about message redaction.
Thanks, Linda. Hi, I'm Sally DeBush. I'm a digital archivist at Stanford Libraries. So I have a quick demo to show you. Let me just get it going. All right, there we go. And I'll narrate this as we watch. So right now we're in ePADD's processing module looking at a specific message, and you can see that there's a little lock icon at the top of the screen. So this allows us to toggle between a preservation view, which would be the original unedited version of the message, and an edited or potentially redacted view of the message. And you can see that there's a little pencil icon on the right side of the message. When you click on that, you open an interface that allows you to edit the text of the message however you would like. So in terms of a redaction workflow, there are a few ways that you could use this. You could replace the sensitive text with asterisks. You could just replace the text with something like brackets that say redacted by the archivist. In this demo, the archivist has chosen to also add a label to the message to indicate that the text of the message has been redacted to provide that transparency to users. Again, this is something that you could customize how you implement. The workflow is quite flexible in terms of how you choose to redact text from messages, and it can kind of be adapted to your specific institutional practices. Um, So one thing to note is that when the message is edited, ePADD will store both the original unedited version of your message and the edited version. The original unedited version does not get exported from the processing module to either of the researcher-facing modules. So that means that it's not possible for a researcher to like inadvertently stumble on the full text or hack into it somehow. That unedited version just is not present in that version of the collection. So this is a feature that we prioritize based on a lot of user feedback, the ability to redact specific information from a message without having to restrict the entire message will hopefully help a lot of users make more of their collections accessible while still protecting sensitive information. So if you've had a chance to use this, we would love to hear more about what you think. And switching gears a little bit, we'll talk now about the discovery module. So I've included this diagram kind of showing you the flow of the module so that we can orient ourselves and where we are in the process of working with ePADD when we're talking about the discovery module. So the discovery module is an optional module that allows you to provide access to a redacted version of a processed email collection online to facilitate discovery by researchers. In the discovery module, only certain information from a processed collection is displayed. And the goal here is to give researchers enough detail to decide whether to make the trip to your reading room to see the full text of the collection while still protecting the privacy of individuals represented in the collection. So there's no ability for users to edit or make any changes with this version of the collection. It is a read-only copy. So what does the discovery module look like and what can researchers see? This slide has a screenshot of what an individual message looks like. You can also take a look in more detail at the live site at epadd.stanford.edu, and I'll just run through what information is present. So what you would see is collection level metadata, which you can kind of think of as being similar to the finding aids front matter, like collection title, number, date ranges, extents, biographical historical note, scope and content, and repository contact information. Within the collection itself, users can see redacted email headers that include the date and time of sending, a subject line, and the redacted email address for senders and receivers. So for the email addresses, only the beginning section of the email is displayed. Everything after the @ symbol is redacted. And while email addresses are redacted, users can still see the full names or aliases of the correspondents in many cases. And then finally, users can see all of the extracted entities from email messages in their proper context within the message. So what is not there? So most importantly, the full text of the messages is never displayed, full email addresses, like I mentioned, and then any attachments, not even attachment file names. So if there's an attachment, it will just say one attachment or two attachments to indicate that those are present in the full text. And so while this view is heavily redacted, there's still a lot of contextual information that a researcher can glean, and we feel that this provides a much richer discovery experience for researchers than a traditional finding aid or catalog record. It also has the advantage of being an automated export from ePADD, so there's no additional work on the part of the archivist to produce it. And it's as a technical note on that export, what you see in the discovery module is what is contained in the exported file. So it's not like the full collection is sitting on the server and ePADD is just masking parts of it. The full collection, the full text of the collection is not contained in those files. So from a security and data privacy perspective, I think that's very comforting. So now that we've kind of covered the discovery module, I also wanted to talk a little bit about how you can contribute your processed collections if you're interested in doing so. Any institution can host their own separate instance of the discovery module, but at Stanford, we also host an instance that's open to other institutions if they would like to publish their process collection metadata there. And that would be epad.stanford.edu. So if you're interested, I would suggest taking a look at the documentation first. It's linked on the slide just to get a sense of the process. And then you can also reach out to us at the email account on the slide. We'd be happy to talk through the logistics and any questions that you might have. And we'd absolutely love to see more institutions come on board to facilitate the discovery of these really fascinating collections. So with that, I'll hand it off to our colleagues at the University of Manchester to talk about their experimentation with applying AI tools to archives.
Yeah, so I'm Jochen Faber, a software developer at the Manchester University Library, doing coding work with ePADD. And yeah, the next slide. So there are a lot of applications for AI, obviously, helping with appraising your email archives. So, for example, you could try to find certain messages with sensitive data, which has always the limitations of like, you really want to be sure you find everything. So if you go through a large archive and you want to find sensitive emails, then yeah, you got any false negatives. That's the thing. And yeah, so one application definitely is like to find things of interest. Like you have a large archive and you're only interested in like certain topics, and AI can help you with that. So yeah, two limitations are first of all size of the archive. So if you have like a archive of like thousands, 10,000 of emails, and processing with AI might take time. And the other limitation is privacy and people being reluctant to send stuff to third parties. So although like a lot of companies offer like business models where they guarantee that your data is not used for anything, people still reluctant to send sensitive data. So one solution to this is to use local hardware, and we do that at the Manchester University Library. We have a dedicated PC with a powerful graphical card, and there we are running Olama, which allows running local LLMs. And that means no data is sent to third parties, and we have full control of the models, which is really nice. But of course, you need local hardware and maintenance, and the performance might be lower than like large cloud models. So yeah, we tried out both. We also tried using ChatGPT. So we plug that in, and that means data is sent via the API. We have access to powerful latest models, no local hardware required, it's easy to scale. But of course, data leaves the institution. We have potential privacy sensitivity concerns, and costs might occur. So the next slide. So for example, you could ask like, what is the sentiment of each email from -1 to +1 and give me like a short explanation. So we tried this, and the result is the next slide. Here we have an email and it says the score is plus 0.6 and the message is constructive and upbeat, proposing a collaborative public event. Interesting thing is the email is not even English, but for the AI that doesn't matter. It just reads it and understands it. And yeah, I tried it. I mean, I translated it and it makes sense. So on the next slide. So yeah, so attachments is an interesting application because attachments are not dealt with much in ePADD. You can display them, you can export them, but not much more. And with AI, you can describe the images and add the descriptions as annotation, which means you have access via the advanced search, for example. So you can put search terms in and find images, or you can ask questions about images. So for example, is this like offensive? And here we have like a Greek statue and it says, yeah, it might be offensive, but it's a classical statue and it's recognized as a culturally significant artwork in a public setting. So the content is safe. It's interesting. So the next slide. Yeah, next step. The limitations are large email archives take a long time to analyze. Next step is allow users to analyze a subset of emails with an archive. So rather than going through your entire archive, finding a subset, for example, with a search or choosing a correspondent and then apply your AI question just on that subset. And yeah, model integration, ChatGPT, at the moment, everything's like hard-coded. So you need like configuration window where you can connect to your ChatGPT account or to your local hardware. Yeah, that's something we are working on. So yeah, next Jess will talk about some experiments she did.
Thanks, Jochen. I'm Jessica Smith, also from the University of Manchester, and I'm an archivist. Can I have the next slide? I think we've missed a slide. No worries. I'll just talk about what we were talking about. So, Jochen and I have been working with appraisal with ePADD at Manchester for a little while now, and of course, the problem we generally come across is volume. So I spent some time manually appraising an ePADD for a subset of about 1,300 email, and it took me about a week. So it was not sustainable for the sort of million email that we had in that collection. Even when we were picking on a subset, it was still taking me significant time. So we thought that perhaps what we would do is utilize some of the AI that we were playing with and try to integrate it, as Jochen says, into ePADD and see if it could help us to narrow down some of the regulatory framework data that we were looking for in the UK. So things to do with the Data Protection Act, sensitive personal data, potentially copyright, possibly libel, that kind of information, sort of things that we're looking to restrict and redact. So the first thing I asked it was, could it pick up in a sentiment analysis, positive and negative sentiment, and could it identify any medical data? Could it come back with sort of a big category for personal data that we'd want to redact and identify?
Where did Jessica go? Did we lose Jessica?
Did we lose her?
Looks like it.
Should we
Not sure, but I
press
don't
on and
think
if she's able to rejoin, we can just backtrack and cover this? Okay. All right, I
That
will
sounds good.
advance. I'll advance the slides.
Hey, we're gonna hopefully we'll be able to that work has been really interesting and there's some really good takeaways that the University of Manchester had. So hopefully we'll be able to backtrack a little bit, but we'll jump ahead for a moment to how we're trying to sustain some of this work. So my name is Trisha Patterson. I'm the interim head of digital preservation at Harvard Library, and I'm on the steering group. As Linda mentioned in the intro, major ePAD developments previously relied on 4 grant-funded cycles between around 2013 to 2022. And in 2023, at the end of the last grant, the project partners in that, which were Stanford, Manchester, and Harvard, a lot of whom you see here today, put on an open call to create a steering group and a code group, which expanded our community even further. And that was to really invite more explicit community investment in sustaining and contributing to the project. So since around that time, the wonderful dev team at the University of Manchester, Jochen, Tom, and Ian, have begun like contributing regularly, and they're leading their code group meetings. And then Harvard Library has been contributing like a small amount of funding because we had decommissioned our homegrown email archiving tool and adopted ePADD. So we were invested in seeing it stabilized. So, in many ways, this has been a success for an open source email archiving tool in terms of longevity and adoption so far. But as we're all aware, and the grant landscape fluctuates, and we knew that our temporary arrangement for dev and funding right now wasn't sustainable for the long term. So, ePADD is such a widely adopted tool at this point, internationally, even that the steering and code groups turned our focus to assessing sustainability options. We consulted, as part of that is kind of our fact finding, we consulted a few different hosting organizations to get a feel for the range of options out there. We talked to other tools and projects that were undergoing the same project kind of process, sustainability process, like BitCurator Consortium and NDSA. And then we also talked to our user community in an open meeting to better understand their priorities. So from there, we defined some baseline needs kind of outlined in the second column right here. We wanted the project to be resilient against single points of failure, an individual or single institution or funding stream that if they left, it would, really undermine the core stability of the project. We at least wanted to ensure a stable code base. So even if that meant that we couldn't figure out a way to like constantly have major feature development, because that might require some like really steady funding stream, and we didn't necessarily want to turn this into like a paid service. We at least wanted to ensure like a stable code base and then, open up major feature development to that same grant funding process or when an institution had the time and space to contribute something and merge that code. And then finally, knowing that this has been a free and open source tool for so long, but that none of this labor to sustain it is free, we wanted to find a practical balance between keeping ePADD open and supported. So, third column. We are excited to soft share that ePADD is partnering with the Open Preservation Foundation to become a hosted project. And the target for that is like this fall 2026. Yay, some claps. For anyone unfamiliar with the OPF, they are a not-for-profit that leads collaborative efforts to develop and maintain a reference toolset of other open source digital stewardship projects such as Jove and Vera PDF and Japalizer. They've also previously partnered with other email projects like the University of North Carolina's Raytom project, so they're not unfamiliar with the email archiving arena. After extensive discussions with their team, we felt like OPF fit that sweet spot of not only keeping ePADD open source, but positioning it alongside a toolkit of other open source projects and internationally, which really reflects our growing user base. And will hopefully strengthen our contributor model as well. It also gives us that organizational gravitational center that's independent of any of our current institutions on the steering group so that we have more stability in being able to circulate membership. So we will have official communications and actual information rolling out as, again, we're targeting that fall 2026 transition. But if you aren't already a member and you want to support efforts to maintain open software, here is the website. And we also are honored that Neil Jeffries, the executive director of OPF, kindly joined this call today in case any questions come up. So I'm gonna pop it back to Jessica to finish her part, and then we'll move on to Diane.
I'm so sorry. I have lousy luck with DPC presentations. Last time my software wouldn't boot. Today, Zoom booted me. So apologies. So, um, I was explaining that we had some limited success with our initial experiments with ePADD and ChatGPT and Olama. So, it was quite good at identifying positive sentiments, and it was pretty good at identifying medical data when it found it. But it was less good with negative sentiments. So it would perhaps not give things the same scores that I would. Um, so it was sort of it would start with sort of possibly very, very positive and then all the way through to sort of possibly very negative, and it was less good at the second half of that kind of identification, which was quite interesting. Occasionally it would pick up things it thought were sarcasm, but not always. Um, and I noticed that it was also the sort of the salutations and the email sign-offs were having some impact on the score that was being allocated. So we'd probably have to fix that if we were going to go any further forward with this kind of identification for data. Because lots of love doesn't necessarily, as we know, mean a nice email. It just means that you're finishing it. Um, so I thought, well, what should we try next? Should we try? So the next thing we try, next slide, please, is to ask the AI to simply apply the Data Protection Act to a set of records. And it gives you these excellent annotations where it explains its logic for how where it's arrived by its decision. And unfortunately, this was even less successful. This was much more vague. This was giving me very random results. Occasionally, it would say things like, "Look, this is a private server. Don't worry about it. You know, the data's safe here," which is not what I was asking it at all. Um, so yeah, there was an awful lot of things it thought were very neutral here. And because I'd already manually appraised the set of email we were using, I could sort of match this up against my own scores and really see if it was replicating any of the kind of decisions that you would make with sort of human analysis. So this one was a bit of a write-off, but it was interesting to try it. I'm glad we tried it. Next slide, please. Great. So I think here really there has to be value in exploring machine learning and AI for appraisal for large email collections. I mean, there's no way we're going to get through this without it. And it's really interesting to think about the things we can do next. So eventually, what I hope we will end up with is a really specific set of rubrics that will allow us to only manually appraise a subset of the email so that we're confident enough in the decisions that's being made by the rest of the appraisal, the machine appraisal. But that will always include an element of calculated risk. So we're always assuming that we're leaving some of that up to a little bit up to chance at the moment. It's just not consistent enough in the results it's bringing back at the moment for me to feel comfortable with relying on it for any kind of appraisal that I wouldn't also then have to manually check at every stage. So that it may be that that it's certainly it's improving all the time. We're seeing a lot of development. It's developing really fast, and I'm also very willing to believe that I'm just not quite asking it the right questions yet. But maybe that some of the questions we develop later in a very my next plan is to develop a really specific and detailed set of appraisal rubrics whereby I try to account for a lot of this hallucination and imaginative thinking and kind of adding its own flavor to things. And it may be that hopefully there'll be enough of that in that rubric to make a bit more of a reliable set of analysis data. But I'd be delighted to hear if anybody has any thoughts that they've been working with their own AI. I mean, the more I work with it, the more I see that actually you really do have to be very specific. So it would be great to hear if anybody else had any questions or suggestions about things we might try. Thank you, and apologies again.
All right. I'm Diane Dietrich. I'm from Cornell University Library, and I want you to think back to the slide about sustainability, and just kind of communicate that I understand it's overwhelming to think about sustainability for projects like this, right? It's really big. Maybe you're not a developer, but I want to assure you there are lots of ways to plug in here. You even don't have to be using ePADD at your organization to join the steering committee. Ask me how I know. We're a friendly and approachable group. And if you're interested in thinking about the sustainability of code projects, I think that this is a really good project to be involved in. So I'm going to list out a couple of ways that you can be involved. There's a whole range. You can join the steering group. You can join Open Preservation Foundation. If you're interested in making technical contributions, you can join the code group. If you just want to learn more about email preservation kind of generally, there's a DPC Technology Watch, Preserving Email. There's also the Novice to Know-How on email preservation. We have how-to videos if you're more of a visual learner and you like to see how things work. You can download the software on GitHub if you're the kind of person who also just likes to jump right in. And if you're already using ePADD, feel free to join the Google group if you did not know it was a thing. So that's only a slice of the things that are available for you. I hope you're really super psyched about email. And we all thank you. And we've reserved the rest of the time for this presentation for Q&A for the group.